Ark Survival Ascended has added a lot of awesome creatures since its release, and many more unique tames are on the way. In this video, I'll be ranking all these creatures based on a few factors that I'll get into shortly. For some clarity, I'll be ranking all of the Ark Additions creatures as well as all the map-specific dinosaurs that are exclusive to Ark Ascended. Since I'm a player who has thousands of hours in both PvE and PvP servers, I'll be considering both modes in my rankings. The criteria I'll be using is how unique the creature is, how it fits into the current meta in regards to strength and functionality, and how cool it is design-wise. Without further ado, let's get into the list. The Dinosaur is a Scorched Earth paywall exclusive tame. I'm completely excluding this tame from my rankings as I think it's stupid for this to be in the game at all. It does look awesome and is insanely overpowered, of course, but I think it's just pointlessly strong, insanely glitchy in PvP, and being able to revive tames removes a lot of what makes Ark the game so many people enjoy. I'm just really not a big fan of putting a paywall behind a specific creature, especially when the creature is really overpowered. And even though I've lost some tames that I've really liked in the past, I just am against the entire idea of reviving tames. I just think it takes away a lot from the game. At number 15, we have the Concavinator from the Ark Additions mod pack. This dinosaur digs underground like the Ceratosaurus, but is able to jump in and out of the ground in a moment's notice. It's also equipped with a tail whip that debuffs enemies hit by it, causing a slowing effect similar to the Lamatria's Poison Cloud. This would have been a really unique creature, but unfortunately for the Concavinator, they just released the Ceratosaurus, which in my opinion basically removes the point of having this in the game. In terms of strength, this is one of the weaker creatures in the entire Ark Additions mod pack as well. For context, pretty much every creature in the Ark Additions mod pack is very strong compared to what it will be if that's actually added to the game. This is proven based on the nerfs they gave to Ceratosaurus and Xiphactinus before adding them. It leads me to assume that they're going to be giving balance changes to all of these creatures before adding them, which would leave the Concavinator as by far the weakest terrestrial creature. I just don't see there being a use case for this, even though it has a pack buff and it has a few good escapability options. I just think this creature needs the most tweaking before being added to the main game out of anything, especially after the Phaslo has already been added. To quickly touch on the design of this thing, it's just an ugly dinosaur. Like, if you look back at previous pictures from the past on what this thing looked like, I don't think there's really any reincarnation of it that would look amazing compared to the other stuff in this pack. So this ranking isn't a diss to the mod creator by any means, it's more of a compliment to how every other creature in this mod pack looks. Overall ranking, 2.3 out of 10. At number 14, I have the Archelon. This is the closest thing we have to a modern day sea turtle inside of Ark. It isn't extremely unique, but definitely has a really nice combination of traits for an early game water mount. He has a saddle that seats 4 players, is completely immune to stuns from jellyfish and eels, and has a jellyfish killer buff, which, you guessed it, comes from killing jellyfish. This buff grants the Archelon a temporary damage increase that is relatively small. The Archelon also produces Archelon algae passively in its inventory, which is used to craft algae sushi. This sushi can be extremely useful because it raises taming effectiveness of unconscious creatures that you're in the process of taming. The Archelon is also incredibly tanky, being even tankier than the mighty Carbonemus. I predict that the HP pool on the Archelon will be nerfed to the point where it's comparable or even worse than the Carbo when it's released to the main game, because yet again, it seems like they want these overpowered modded creatures to be pretty balanced in regards to the main game's meta based on what they did to the Cerato and the Xiphactinus before adding them in. The Archelon is already faster than the Carbonemus, so it really would make a lot of sense if they nerf the HP on the Archelon a bit. In regards to the design, I do like the theme of it being a giant sea turtle. I also think it's pretty polished. I'd have it ranked higher if it was cooler. The problem is everything else in this mod pack, like I mentioned for the Concavinator, is just so awesome. Overall ranking, 4.7 out of 10. At number 13, we have the Gigantoraptor. This was released for the island as the first Ark Ascended exclusive creature, and at first I really liked this thing. I mean, its design was really unique, I thought the taming method was a really cool concept, and I liked that they had a quality of life tame for raising babies since Maywing hasn't been released to Ascended quite yet. I'm really just gonna skip over talking with the Gigantoraptor much because it's been out for a while. It's a nice tame for raising creatures in both PvP and PvE servers, and it's pretty much a cooler looking, worse functionality version of the Maywing. Overall ranking, 5.7 out of 10. Coming in at number 12, we have Yi Ling. This is the exclusive creature Wildcard will be releasing on Aberration. I won't talk about this much in this video because it hasn't been released yet, so I don't have as many details on this besides what the dossier and community vote info gave us. What I do know is that this creature can cling to walls, glide for short distances, eats a lot of weird things like congealed gas balls, and that Yi Ling's weaponry is affected by what it eats. It sounds like an awesome and unique creature. I absolutely love its design, and it's coming out alongside the best map Ark has ever released. Basically, there's a lot of reason to be excited. This would be much higher, but I predict it to be pretty weak in the grand scheme of the PvP meta, considering how small it is and how it doesn't have any meaningful debuff like the Deinonychus from the looks of it. Even if it did, Yeeling's stats would almost certainly hold it back. Overall ranking, 6.3 out of 10. At number 11, we have the Phaslosuchus. This is the creature that caused the Concavenator to be so low compared to everything else in my rankings. Its abilities are unique, its taming method is unique, and it's really badass in the design department. Yet again, I won't get much into this creature because he's already been released, but he really isn't as strong as he appears. His Sand Tornado is a really cool idea that doesn't work a lot of the time because the target is too big, the Phasla is taking too much damage, or just simply the terrain is not flat enough, whether that be due to obstacles or even just hills. The only reason the strength isn't at a 1 or a 2 is because its base stats are pretty solid. Overall ranking, 6.7 out of 10. At number 10, I have the Cryolophosaurus. This dinosaur has 4 features that make him really unique when packaged together. He has a charge for 2 ranged attacks, a freeze similar to the Managarmr, and a huge torpor ability. The Cryolophosaurus also inflicts torpor when biting enemies normally. His 4th unique feature is his Icebreaker ability, which activates when the Cryolophosaurus detects a nearby frozen or unconscious enemy. While active, this buffs a Cryolophosaurus' damage, stamina regen, and resistances. He's also quick, moving similarly to a raptor while being around the size of a Baryonyx. The Cryolophosaurus is the first tame on this list that is really strong. I think this will be primarily viable in cave defense. This is because the freeze projectile coming from the Cryolophosaurus is a wider cone in comparison to the Managarmr's beam, so I think this is going to be a really effective method to stop turret runners. With the Cryolophosaurus and the fact that you can't pump movement speed on characters anymore, turret diving is going to be significantly more difficult than it was in Ark Survival Evolved. In regards to appearance, I think the Cryolophosaurus is pretty cool. I really like the ice theming on it, I like the Managarmr color scheme a lot, and I think it's a really nice step up from the basic raptor in the game in terms of appearance and ability. It's just a simple concept that works really well. Overall rating, 7 out of 10. At number 9, I have the Xiphactinus. This fish is basically a barracuda. Here's a couple of cool features about the Xiphactinus. It inflicts bleed, grabs things in its mouth, and receives a buff when it swims through the cloud of blood that it creates. It also jumps out of the water and can flop on land, and can also jump out of the water and grab things out of the air. As a final perk on top of everything I just listed, it's very fast as well, being on the same level as the Ichthyosaurus speed-wise. With its unique attributes all laid out, let's talk about how strong this thing actually is. I think the Xiphactinus might be the most underrated creature in this entire mod pack in regards to strength. First of all, if it gets a player in its mouth, it's gonna one-shot the player. It doesn't matter what armor they're wearing, they will die. Its Blood Frenzy ability gives it a stamina regeneration boost and a health regeneration boost for a short period of time, which is very important for this creature. This is because the health pool in the Xiphactinus is its biggest weakness, and having this ability activate enables you to either escape a fight that you're losing badly, or tank it out for a little bit longer if the fight is taking longer than you would have liked. This ability just complements the Xiphactinus so perfectly. In PvP, I can see this being a really good option to prevent underwater base soaking. I also foresee this being a really great option in fighting the Gen 1 underwater boss because the bleed has proven to do really well in boss fights in the past with the Deinonychus. The only other weakness that's very prevalent with this is that it can be grabbed by a Tuso. This obviously means that fighting a Tuso is going to be a bad idea for this thing, but if you have a large pack of them, they can still beat a Tuso. Generally, I think these will be used in packs considering they do get a pack buff, and running them in a pack will prevent a lot of the weaknesses they do have. I think as time goes on, these will be very viable in the PvP meta underwater. I'm also extremely terrified to ever try to transfer off of Ragnarok from the red or blue obelisk for the rest of time, because getting hit by one of these is definitely worse than getting hit by a Capra. In regards to the design, I think it's pretty goofy, especially the eyes, but it's definitely intimidating, which is the most important part for a barracuda. Overall ranking, 7.3 out of 10. At number 8, we have the Shastasaurus. This is a huge whale they plan to release on the center, whenever they actually launch that map. Its dossier entry image shows an enclosed area on its back, which leads me to believe you don't need scuba to ride this thing without losing oxygen. I think this could be a really cool idea. especially if you can build inside the area. I mean, that would be awesome. I don't think this thing is going to be insanely overpowered in regards to PvP, but I do think it could be a really awesome soaker option if you are immune to turrets while inside the saddle. The main reason I have it so high on this list though is because of its design. I mean, just look at this thing. It really just feels like a giant ichthy due to its passive nature, which is described in the dossier. And when you look closely at the image, you'll see small ichthyes riding alongside the Ceratosaurus, showing just how massive this thing is. If this dossier image is to scale, this might be the largest underwater creature we've ever seen inside of the game. My only real concern for it is actually that it might be too big, but we'll just have to wait and see. Overall ranking, 7.7 out of 10. Hi, Future Jace here. I just noticed they released a new image about the Ceratosaurus showing how it's going to look a little bit more. I don't think this changes anything about my rankings just because I think now it looks a little bit more clear, like they're going to be able to build bases inside of it. But at the same time, I really do not feel good about how this looks. It looks like it's going to be a mesh nightmare. I'll get more information on this, and whenever I do, I'll make a video about it in the future. For now, my ranking stays the same. I'm a little skeptical about this. Also, I don't see the point of having an underwater missile launcher. Maybe I'm missing something. Leave it in the comments if you see the point of this. I don't get it. I don't think this really moves the scale for me too much. It is cool, but when would you use this? At number 7, I have the Helicoprion. This is the most unique creature out of everything being added, in my opinion. Its one key trait, turning items into a blueprint, is a great enough ability that I couldn't put it any lower than this on my list. The Helicoprion even has a stat that can be upgraded to improve this conversion's success rate. It also has a tail whip which can stun enemies. I'm not really going to talk about that too much though, because this thing isn't really made for fighting. The strength of this creature is just the blueprint thing. In regards to its design, I think it's just above average. It looks pretty badass, but it's just not as large as you'd expect for something that looks this cool. I also feel like creatures that are primarily used for their utility, like gotchas and this and other farming dinosaurs, shouldn't look super intimidating because that's not really what they're meant for. It is really cool, it just doesn't fit the vibe in my opinion, so I docked it a few points. Overall ranking, 8 out of 10. Tied for 5th, I have the Ceratosaurus. This dinosaur is awesome. First off, he's pretty unique. He has a one-of-a-kind taming method and is very uniquely crafted to have the tools to be a really good boss fighting dinosaur. This is because of its bleed effect, which allows your carnivores to lifesteal off of a target while it's bleeding from a Ceratosaurus bite. I think this mechanic is a lot more unique than something like a Daeodon, and I'm a really big fan of it. It also comes with a charge ability, which at its top speed is the fastest thing in the entire game on land. While the charge is at its top speed, it also breaks obstacles like rocks, so not much will be slowing you down. Except for turning, of course. Even though I kinda brushed on this earlier, let's get into strength now. The Ceratosaurus is maybe a must-have in certain boss fights now based on how good it is. Even though they nerfed it from the mod packs version, it's still significantly better than a Daeodon's healing if you're using carnivores in the fight. Design-wise, this thing looks fantastic. To start off, I love the spikes. In my opinion, I just think this thing is an upgraded looking Carnotaurus. I think it looks way more intimidating, is significantly cooler, and is way more fun to use. My only issue with this is it kind of removes the entire point of having Daedons in the game. I mean, they got completely power crept with this thing being released. Once they add snowy owls back into the game, there will literally never be a point for a Daedon ever again. So I think they definitely need to TLC a Daedon in a future update. Overall ranking, 8.3 out of 10. The other creature I have tied for 5th is the Dinotherium. The Dinotherium is very unique and will be extremely strong in PvP. It comes with extremely good agility compared to what you'd expect from its appearance, 3 diverse attacks that allow it to handle nearly any threat, a pack boost, and a gender-specific rally call to boost all nearby allied creatures. If the rally call is from a male, it will boost melee and stamina regeneration, and resistances will be boosted if the call is from a female. The Dinotherium also has a unique set of attacks, but I don't think you're going to be using the attacks too much with this thing. I think the most value will come out of rally calling your allied creatures and players while you're fighting in combat. I mean, don't get me wrong, this thing can output a lot of damage with its Tusk Swipe or its Giga Stomp, but it's really just not made for that type of fighting. The other really strong feature of the Dinotherium is the way its saddle is constructed. If you notice based on the design, it's going to be extremely difficult, if not impossible, to pick a player off of one of these Dinotheriums, and it's way too big to be carried by any flyer that's currently in the game. What this basically means is, in PvP, it's almost impossible to stop a player from buffing their teammates with one of these things, and it is really really powerful when the buffs go through. I also really like the design of this thing, especially the design of the saddle. Yet again, all of these top creatures are really agile, smooth to control, and come equipped with unique and strong abilities, so it's really me nitpicking to pick these top few, but I will say the last 4 on this list are a tier of their own. I'm really excited for these to be in the game. Overall ranking for the Dinotherium, 8.3 out of 10. Coming in at number 4, I have the Dinosaurus. This thing is awesome. It isn't super unique because it's basically a huge Sarco with a gigabyte that inflicts a fracture debuff to its target. This makes it almost impossible for a victim to escape, even though the Dinosaurus isn't known for its speed. This crocodile isn't only viable on land though, it's also very good in the water. With its decent speed and significantly better stats than most underwater creatures, this thing can hold its own against anything you'll find down there. In all honesty, I don't really see many applications for this into the PvP side of the game, just because in order to actually hit a gigabyte, I think the other player has to literally be asleep or have their monitor off. But the Dinosaurus, in regards to design, in regards to power, in regards to everything like that, it's just really cool. It's an amazing creature to see and use. It's really fun, and I can't wait to use it in the PvE side of the game. I'd talk about the design a bunch, but there's literally no point in me doing it. Literally just look at it. This is probably one of the 5 best designs in all of Ark history, and I'm not exaggerating. Overall rating, 8.7 out of 10. At number 3, I have the Acrocanthosaurus. This is undoubtedly the dino from Ark Additions that people want to see the most, and I can see why. This is a very intricately crafted dinosaur that can go toe-to-toe with just about anything in the game. It has a normal and a shield stance, an adrenaline ability that buffs it an absurd amount, and a diverse set of attacks. To get its adrenaline ability activated, you need to fill up the adrenaline bar, which happens when you take damage while in the shield stance. Once you've filled up the bar doing this, let out a roar and you have the buff. The buff gives you a substantial increase in damage output, attack speed, health regen, and resistance for a solid amount of time. While this ability is active, you also can't re-enter shield stance. With the Acro's wide range of abilities, great defensive tools like high knockback and added resistance because of the shield stance, and insane base stats, the Acro is a well-rounded choice for most combat styles. In terms of design, I do like the Acro and I think it's one of the coolest looking creatures in the mod pack, but it's not my absolute favorite. I'll get into that favorite that I was just talking about in a few minutes though. First, let's get into number 2 on my list. Overall ranking for the Acro, 9 out of 10. At number 2, I have Dreadnoughtus. This is the last creature that isn't released in any form yet, so I'm just here to speculate. Based on the dossier, it seems like this will have artillery installed in its saddle or within its spikes on its back or something like that, and it has multiple ammo types that it can shoot. It appears to be able to go toe-to-toe with the Ice Titan in regards to at least size and I imagine in strength. If this assumption is correct, I'm going to go out on a limb and say the Dreadnoughtus is by far the strongest creature being released in Ark Ascended. I also foresee this creature being the new meta when it comes to fighting the King Titan if you can have multiple of them at a time. If this is actually how you can use these, I'm going to be really happy about it because I'm kind of tired of breeding 1,000 gigas just to let them all die to one King Titan stomp. That's just not a process I ever foresee myself repeating, so this is good. In regards to design, this thing just looks badass. Overall ranking, 9.3 out of 10. Coming in at number 1, I have the Brachiosaurus. Okay, I might be a little biased towards sauropods, but I really like the Brachiosaurus too. First, let's talk about the Brachiosaurus's combat and harvesting stance. The Brachiosaurus's combat stance is when it's standing on its hind legs. Stomping while on its hind legs does a Giga Stomp, which is one of the strongest attacks in the game. It's actually so overpowered that the mod creator had to put a 30-second cooldown on it so people couldn't just spam it and kill anything they wanted. When it's on all fours, that's when it's in its harvesting stance. While you're in the harvesting stance, you can actually cycle between any resource in the game, and Brachiosaurus will focus on mining for that resource. For example, if I select stone, I will only get stone from these rocks and I get a lot of it. Brachiosaurus also comes equipped with a very high weight stat and a weight reduction on most resources. The Brachiosaurus also has a regular stomp and a hind leg kick while in the harvesting stance, so you can fight during that mode as well. The main ability that's useful on it that I haven't mentioned yet is its Fear Roar. This thing's Fear Roar is insanely overpowered. It's actually so good that you can scare off gigas with it. In PvP, I think it's too big of a target to be super viable, but the Fear Roar could be really good if used at an opportune time. In terms of PvE use cases, this thing is pretty much as good as it gets. Overall ranking, 9.7 out of 10. Well, that's my list. I hope you enjoyed or at least learned something from these rankings. If you want more Ark content in the future, let me know and hit that sub button. It helps out the channel a lot, and I have a lot of big plans for the rest of the year, so it's much appreciated. Thanks again for watching. This has been Jace, and I'll see you guys next time.